Hello, welcome to the Zig-Zag conversation. My name is Roosevelt Jean-Francois. Today I have the distinct honor to have a conversation with my friend. You have seen her on Instagram a couple of times, on YouTube, you name it, and ask the therapist Nathalie Ellis. And when I first met Nathalie, I remember that was years ago in Atlanta, Georgia, from
Hmm.
a family gathering. And,
Yes.
and you have developed to become someone who is also our community. My first question for you is what is special with this moment that we are living now?
Wow. So what is special? Um, Lots of special things and lots of unique things, lots of scary things. So what makes it special is that there's just so much going on with this time. And at this point, we're talking about the coronavirus, COVID-19, quarantine, and the impacts of all of those things, which have left people without jobs, some people without income, with some people just fearing for their lives in terms of safety and health. And so just kids out of school. And for me, I have a senior, my son's a senior this year, no prom, no graduation, no anything. So just there's just lots of things that's impacting us that makes this situation very special and unique, and in some ways too very traumatic. And so yes, so as a mental health therapist, and particularly I specialize in trauma, this is definitely something that I want to make sure that people are aware of in terms
What
of
is trauma?
having this conversation.
What is trauma?
um, Trauma, so there's emotional trauma, there's psychological trauma, there's physical trauma, there's all kinds of trauma. So starting with, let's say, physical trauma is when you might hit your head, right?
Hmm.
So the fact that you hit your head, you have a head injury and you have a head trauma, right? And so hitting your head is creating some type of may create a concussion. So there's some type of impact to your head because you hit it, right? And so that's a physical trauma.
Hmm.
So there's such thing as emotional trauma, psychological trauma. So what we're speaking of is more emotional and psychological trauma at this point. And so because of everything that's happening and everybody's experiences, emotionally, it impacts us significantly. And so
And
when something is traumatic is when, based on that experience, and which is also based on our previous experiences, because everybody handles things differently. So based on our previous experiences, based on our skill set, based on our support system, is going to then determine, okay, there's this thing that's happening, how is it going to impact me? And
so
when it
now,
impacts,
based on what you do, you have been in conversation, helping people, sessions from 7 to 70, and what are the most cases that come to your practice? What have you seen so far?
what have I seen? So the underlying of everything I've seen does relate to trauma, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether we're talking about sexual abuse, neglect, um, hurricanes, people who's had some type of physical trauma that's occurred in their lives, or some type of emotional trauma, whether it's neglect, abandonment. So inevitably, with every client that I have, there's some form of trauma at different degrees that they have. Now, with that, some people are dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people are dealing with depression. Some people are dealing with anxiety. Um, some people are dealing with OCD as a result of some of those things.
Hmm.
Um, so there's all kinds of diagnosis that people come in with.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of what I've seen, the some of the foundational stuff does relate a lot to their traumas based on their experiences. Yes.
Then came 2020. It was January 2020, and the world is not the same and it will never be the same. Can we be the same? Can we adopt the same behaviors to adapt ourselves to this new norm, to this new reality?
Yes, it is about readjusting ourselves to a new norm, right? So whenever we experience any form of trauma, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're no longer who we were, right? Now we're new, right? Sometimes now what makes it difficult is the fact that we have to let go of the old and now adjust to a new, right? And so in that period too, there's a loss that occurs, right? So a lot of people are experiencing loss of jobs, loss of health, loss of relationships, loss of connections. There's lots of losses that's occurring as a result of this trauma with the coronavirus. And when there's losses, we have to grieve. And yes, and those are the things that we definitely need to make sure that people understand, that they're going to be grieving. And with losses too, yes, things can't go back to what it was. You know, now it's about readjusting, redefining, reassessing our lives to know, okay, how do I move forward with this, with these losses that's occurred? How do I now move forward to create this new normal?
Now,
Right?
what I like with what you said is the importance of grieving in this moment. But at that
Yes.
same moment, also, we are a family. Let's take my family. My wife is working as a nurse. She's a front line provider of service
For
with
sure.
COVID-19. I'm staying home. I'm in self-isolation. So that means she has the pressure and the stress of the work. And I have myself the boredom and anxiety of staying home. And I also have sons. One of them is a senior and there is no graduation. So that means within my home, there is a cocktail of grieving, of things we have lost, of stress. Now, how to cope with that? Yesterday, I had the pleasure. Thank you, therapist Nathalie. Thank you,
Definitely.
therapist Ellis, because I was on your Instagram and you were having a live showing us how to cope in that situation. Can you repeat can you share with us how to cope in that
Yes.
situation?
Sure. So the what I talked about yesterday in my Instagram live was just two ways of coping, two strategies to cope with when we're in a place of distress, right? And so I talked about diaphragmatic breathing and how we have our breath all the time, anytime. So whenever there's chaos around us, whenever we're feeling some type of way, whatever's going on, we can always manage it through our breath. Because what typically tends to happen is when we're in distress, we start to breathe heavy, we start to feel discomfort, we start to feel these things in our body, right? As
Mm-hmm.
a result of that, guess what's happening? We're not getting enough oxygen to the body, nor are we getting enough oxygen to the brain. And so
And
it's
today,
important.
oxygen is the new currency. That's what people with COVID-19, that's what they are looking for. They just need a ventilator to have one more breathing to life.
Yes, yes, yes. And so breathing becomes really important. And as a matter of fact, that's the other thing too. Let's go even back to the health thing of COVID-19, right? So one of the things that I've read was to ensure that you don't have it and to keep checking yourself is to make sure you could take a deep breath and hold your breath for 10 seconds, right? So if you could hold your breath for 10 seconds, you're good, right? So breathing becomes really essential. And that's at all times, right? And unfortunately, we don't value it as much. But in times of chaos and crisis, when we take a moment to really make sure we're breathing fully through our nose and down our lungs and to our diaphragm, our belly, and when we're breathing fully like that, our belly should be expanding. That means we're fully bringing oxygen all the way down to our belly. And that means we're taking a full breath, that we're bringing oxygen back to our bodies and to our brains and to our cells. And so then that could help calm the body, because the body's not calm when it's losing oxygen.
Mm.
The body calms down when it's getting oxygen to the body. So that is always something we can do. When we're mad, whatever's happening, our body feels it and our body's in distress. And so a way that we could cope and manage is to get our body back in control. And we can do that.
And I like the way you put it yesterday. You said you have that conversation with yourself. Say, it's okay, it's okay. It's okay,
Exactly.
Roosevelt. It's okay. Things will be well.
And I constantly have conversations with myself because we're consistently bombarded, right? We're bombarded all the time, all day long. And so
Mm.
these are things we could learn. I have 3-year-olds that I'm teaching to breathe. I have little, as young as they come to me, and they come to me as young as 3, I'm teaching them how to breathe, how to manage their bodies, right? So yes, you're constantly bombarded, and then with everything, you start thinking, your mind goes in whatever direction it goes, your body starts to feel what it's feeling, and so then our breath is something we can do to, okay, calm it down, so we could know what to do next. So
Mm.
yes, breathing was one of the things I talked about, as well as visualization, and visualization is just a cognitive, a mental picture of a mental structure of a picture an image that you want to recreate in your mind, right? And so for me, also when I'm stressed, I recreate the image of the beach because I love the beach, and so I recreate that image. And when you recreate those images, making sure you include all of the senses, because we experience everything
I
through
like that one.
our senses. Yes,
I like that one. I
definitely.
was taking notes and you said, oh, I'm seeing the blue ocean. I'm feeling the warmth of the way of the sun on my skin. I'm
Yes,
listening the birds chirping. And so not only that, one thing that you said that I like, I'm breathing calmness and I'm breathing out that chaotic that I don't want.
yes, yes. So that's called intentional breathing, right? So one of the things that I also do, because I'm, like I said, I'm a therapist. I see clients all day long, from hours at a time, and so I'm constantly bombarded with emotions of things, right? And so there's things that I have to do to make sure I keep my wellness, that I stay well. And yes, and so yeah, as clients start talking, and then as I start to feel burdened, yes, I start to breathe, take deep breath, and I start to visualize. And so even with my breathing, I would say, breathe in, calm and peace, and
And you
breathe out.
said it will take some time to incorporate this habit into your repertoire of behaviors because this is not something you just do it and then you get it.
Right, which is why people would often say, well, breathing doesn't work for me, or that doesn't work for me. Well, things can work when we want it to work, but it does take practice. Everything takes practice, right? And so in sessions with clients, as we not only work through whatever their trauma is, their stuff, we process it through words and talking about it, then we also develop tools and skills. And so I'm teaching them to breathe. So throughout sessions, I'm like, hey, what are you feeling now? What does your body tell you? Okay, breathe, take deep breath, and let's practice that. Let's visualize a calm place. Let's visualize a safe place. And so yes, these are things we have to practice all the time, so that when the crisis happens, okay, I have my list of tools that I can do, right? Yes.
If you're listening to this program, my name is Roosevelt Jean-Francois, Zig-Zag Conversations. Today, I'm speaking with therapist Nathalie Ellis, and we are speaking about how to cope with traumatic situation, how to cope with that situation. One thing that Nathalie mentioned is listen to your body, breathe in, and as well visualize the best picture of your life you want. I understand this, Nathalie, at my personal level. Now, I'm part of a community, the Haitian community, where I'm from. And we also have stigma about mental health. When things happen to us, even in my family, if I see the mood of one of my kids or my wife, the mood is down, I have a tendency to say, what happened? Ça passe là. And now, at a macro level, not at a personal level, how can we bring a new conversation, starting with our nucleus family and beyond?
Well, I too am Haitian. I'm from Haiti, and so growing up, it's interesting because we have these open conversations within my family, and it's funny because people would say is when somebody's sick, no matter what the sickness, it's voodoo, right? No matter what the sickness, it's somebody put a curse on you. So again, this is definitely a part of our culture, and there is validity to that part of our culture as well, right?
Mhm.
However, there's other things too, right? And that's where the conversation is. It's not to dispel, it's not to dismiss the Haitian culture and the Haitian values, but to also say, let's bring in other things. Well, it could be this too, you know.
Mhm.
As Haitians, like a lot of Blacks and Africans in the diaspora, has experienced lots of generational trauma, right? And Haitians are no different, and Haitians continue to consistently experience a lot of trauma. So there's a lot going on. And so then we have to look at that. Yeah, the way that we're being treated, the way that we treat others, and the things that we're experiencing us, how does that affect us? How does that affect how we feel? How does that affect how we think? How does that affect how we behave? How does that affect the way it makes our body respond? So all those things affect us. And so we should be having conversations about that.
But you understand also, having conversations is not as easy as it is on such an emotional topic. How would you suggest that we start the conversation? By starting the conversation, I mean how to incorporate the very same way we talk about going to church, the very same way we talk about food. Should we have sometimes a big family gathering or something happen and then we just bring the topic, hey, how do you feel? The question of feeling, it is not a touchy subject. It is something that we want to talk, I would say, to assess and to understand other people's feeling as well.
Well, I think the first place to start is to identify the commonality, right? And so everybody kind of understands feeling stressed, right? And so work, we might start with, you know what, you got this on your plate, this on your plate. And people could say, yeah, I got this. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, it's so much. So those are basic things people get, right? And so that's how I start my conversation with clients as they come in, to let them know of the importance of mental health, right? Is to keep it really, really simple, right? So I usually would say, this is kind of inside of our body. Every time we experience something, we feel something about it, you know, we're upset or we're stressed, and we just kind of put that thing in here because we just know how to move on, because we'll continue to move on. We'll continue to do the thing we're supposed to do, right? But every time we experience somebody who hurt our feelings, somebody who died, somebody who left us, a breakup, or we lost a job, or whatever, all the things that you know, my boss added an extra thing for me. Oh my God, I got to go into work and there's all this safety stuff out there. The COVID-19, there's all these things. Every experience that we have, we carry it. We have it. It's us. It's ours, right? And oftentimes what happens is we put it in here. We put it somewhere because we got to keep going. And I get it. We have to keep going. But what happens to this is, after a while, depending on how much losses you have, depending on how much pain you have, depending on how much hurt you have, this gets really heavy. And people could get that. Because then when I talk to clients basically about everything that they've going on, they're like, yep, that's something I didn't talk about. Yep, that's something. And after a while, this gets heavy. Well, that's when our mental health is always impacted. But at this point, this gets heavy. Now we're truly impacted because now we're tired. It's hard to function, right? And so depending on, also with the thing about mental health, there's different degrees. There's different degrees based on genetics, biological stuff. There's so many things. So with mental health, yes, there's the norm within that, but there's also schizophrenia. There's the extremes of those things as well, right? And so we're not really sure, people aren't really sure where they fit unless we look at the family history of behaviors of different things like that. But again, what I was to say is, now, yes, we have all of this. What do we do with all of this? Because people start to feel heavy. People start to feel tired, you know? And so, okay, so what do we do with that? And that's where it starts. Because guess what? You don't have to be heavy. You don't have to be tired. You don't have to be these things. There's things we can do about that. And that's what I tell people. There's things we can do about that. We can lighten this load. We can make this be a little less heavier by how we learn to manage ourselves, by how we take in information, right? And so we can make this a little lighter. And that's what therapy is about. That's what mental health is about. And again, there's different degrees, because there's some people, there's a genetic, there's other things, there's brain dysfunction, there's other layers, yes, and that may require more and other extremes of things, yes, in terms of treatment. But again, it starts with the basics of it. How do we manage the things that we're experiencing with how we feel, with how we think, with how we behave, and what's happening to our body. The other thing too is mental health and physical health hand in hand, because it's all one body. It's all one body, hand in hand. So people get that. So I always say, headaches, right? Stomach aches, yeah, right. Some of that, yes, some of that we could rule out in terms of a medical issue, but majority of the time it's not. It's usually a mental health issue, because after a while, you carrying this stuff weighs heavy. I feel it. When I'm stressed, I feel the weight on my shoulders, and it starts to feel heavier on me. When that stays on too long, it's going to have a physical effect to the body. Stomach pains, ulcers could create ulcers, headaches. Now there's migraines. So I could be perfectly fine. One minute I think about something and now my head starts to hurt. And then now headaches. And when we ignore these things, which is what happens. So this gets heavy and we ignore it. We do nothing about it because, well,
we're busy.
It's not important, right? It's dismissed. It's not valued, right? Keep going. But the more we're going, the bag that we're carrying, this thing we're carrying, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier.
And you cannot travel too far with an heavy bag on your back. There is too much. And sometimes if you are floating, you are swimming and you have that. There is not too much you can do. Now, if I understand what you said, well, the very same way I have a personal trainer, the very same way I have a medical doctor, I understand I need a therapist.
You know what? I am a strong advocate of everybody having a therapist in their support system, right? And so I go see my doctor every year for a physical checkup. Every year. My dentist, I have to see my dentist every 6 months. Those are what's recommended. Our mind is what we have all the time too. We experience things every single moment. And you're saying we shouldn't have somebody to help us work through that stuff? No, we should. So yes, I'm a strong advocate of people having a therapist in their team.
And does therapists have therapists themselves? Do you have one?
Therapists have therapists. Therapists have their own set of tools that they use to make sure they handle these situations. Therapists talk to other therapists to consult. So there's definitely things that we have to do for self-care. And so speaking of front lines, as you mentioned, people are in the front lines who is in the positions of constantly caring for others that are sick. It is important that there is time taken to take care of yourself.
And I will say nowadays, I've got a friend, we used to go to the same high school. He died as a medical doctor, Dr. Verrier. And in New York, we have nurses, the Asian American Nurses Association, but also you as a professional, you need to know that, hey, beyond whatever the association is doing, there's your self-care. And you need to have that tool, having a professional to where you can download, if I understand, download that heavy load that you are carrying, and that will help you travel not that heavy.
Correct.
You will carry more. Now, once again, this is Zig-Zag Conversation. My guest today, Nathalie Ellis, therapist. She is a licensed social worker. And
no, licensed professional counselor.
Oh, licensed professional counselor. Correct. Based in Atlanta, Georgia. We also have lots of our third, I will say, prior generation. They are living today in loneliness. People older than myself or as old as myself, living by themselves, maybe in a home by themselves, maybe in assisted living where they have no visit. And some of them might be watching this, or their kids or their children are watching this. At that stage where you are 65, you still have life, because life is life, whatever age you are. What is your approach to that part of our population?
So let's start with what you said, people who live alone. So yes, with a lot of my clients, so So right now I am doing all my sessions virtually. So I see 30 to 35 clients a week. And one thing I continue to press upon my clients and press upon the community is that this is not the time to isolate. This is the time to make sure that you're seeking support. And so I tell my clients, all my clients, yeah, let's do our session. Even if you don't think you have much to say, but just let's talk about how you're feeling today. Let's just talk about your week. That just gives it an opportunity for something to not get stuffed in here, but to just kind of put it back out there in the universe. So you don't have to hold on to it. And so with people that live alone, one of the things that I talk a lot about is making sure you create. We have to be creative because we can't touch, we can't see each other physically. The social distancing. We have to figure out ways to still stay connected. Whether it's doing video calls, whether it's doing and with video calls, and I tell clients there's lots of funny things, there's lots of fun things you can do. You could set up a wine date with your friends and everybody bring their wine. There's lots of different creative ways to do it. So the conversation doesn't have to be as it's been typically. Now when we're having conversations, because everything has to be via Zoom or via video, we could, let's bring our wine. Everybody come share their wine versus in the conversation. With another client, because she misses touching people, because she too lives by herself. And so one of the things that we talked about is, well, let's get a substitute for the different family members. And so we talked about maybe getting a teddy bear. So every time you talk to somebody, you could hold on to the bear. You could have a different bear for everybody, however way you want to do it. And as you're talking to them, squeeze the bear as if you're squeezing them. Right? And so then you could get that touch again, because you want that touch, right? Squeeze the bear, right? So there's lots of things we can do. We just have to do it differently. We could play games through video. There's Netflix Watch, where Netflix, through Chrome, you could invite people to watch a movie with you, and then everybody's in the chat room. You could just converse through the chat room. So there's lots of things that's out there.
What I get from what you said is the importance of doing things together, that togetherness. That means
togetherness is important, right? Especially when you already know you're prone for depression, prone for anxiety, prone for certain things. You want to make sure you're not in your headspace for too long by yourself. You want to make sure you're seeing people, right? And so with anybody, even those who are people who tend to be loners, people who tend to be introvert, at some point you still need to be around people, because we're social beings, we're human beings, and we're meant to be social. We're meant to be around people, human connection. That's part of our functioning. And so with this quarantine, we can't spend the whole time and not have any kind of connection. No, that's not going to work, right? We have to make sure we're staying connected. And for different people, that may look different. But we need to make sure we're staying connected visually with people and things of that sort. And there's lots of creative ways to do that.
And also we need some me time, even if we want to connect with people, but at the end we need to return. So there is a segue between what is too much, where you also need time to pause, to ponder, to reflect, and to take notes, to have your journal, if you journal, whatever you do, and so forth. So if I need your services, how to contact you, and tell us where you are.
Okay. Yes. So again, my name is Nathalie Ellis. I have a private practice in the Decatur, Georgia area, which is close to the city of Atlanta. And people can reach me in different forms in social media. I have an Instagram page, which is Esteem Counseling Services. My YouTube page, Esteem Counseling Services. My Facebook, Esteem Counseling Services. And again, my mission with my business, Esteem Counseling Services, Esteem Counseling and Consulting Services, which is what Esteem stands for, empower self through enrichment, education, and motivation. And so my goal is to empower others by educating them about mental health, making sure they're enriched in regards to things regarding mental health, and to make sure that they're motivated. Okay, and all that's what I do, and a lot of that is working with them through therapy. I do groups, I do workshops. So like you mentioned, a lot of people aren't comfortable with the word therapy. So I do workshops. I do a lot of things through Instagram Live, again, to make therapy and make the word mental health become a normal conversation. It's important that we take care of our self, our whole self, right? And our mental health is all about how we see and perceive things around us. And we need to make sure that we are taking care of that. And so I'm a strong advocate of that. And so with on all my social medias, I try to make sure I put videos out there so people are educated, are informed, and make sure they seek support and get a mental health checkup. Just like we have to go get a physical health checkup, go to the dentist, go to the OBGYN, make sure we also get a mental health checkup.
This is a way to say that, hey, we need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to breathing, to go back to who we are, to listen to our body when we feel those, we call them courbatures. We feel, hey, there is something. That means there is something with a computer. Sometimes when there is too much, if I open too many windows on my computer now, it will be frozen. That will be the very same thing with our mind. That's what I get from therapist Ellis' conversation today. And
That's the way to put it. Exactly. And so
I
the
need
way
to
to do
reach
that,
out
we have
to I need to reach out to other peoples as well. I know there is stigma associated with it. I know also there is the shame, there is the guilt. But the more you take that baggage from that ball that you spoke about, the more I put it away, because professionally I can let down my guards. So now I become lighter, and now I can face the new things. I create space to face new things. Now I know when I go to the beach, yesterday, by the way, yesterday after your live, I was here listening, and I said, let me go outside and just have a walk. And I took the time to enjoy the sun touching my skin. And there was a little bird chirping outside, and I was looking up. It was on the top of the pole by my driveway. And this morning, when I woke up, I recreated that image in my mind.
Nice.
And those things you can learn. And that's what I think. I thank you for your service. I thank you for your dedication, for your mission, because at the end of the day, that's what an entrepreneur is. There's a difference between an entrepreneur and a business person. If someone has a business, that does not make you an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, in my mind, is someone who is solving a problem. You have identified the problem. Myself, I grew up in a family with mental health issues. I mean, every single human being has some mental health issues. Some recognize it and some do not. But at the end of the day, when you face it, the thing you face, they become not your enemy. You can make them your friends. And thank you, Nathalie.
Great point. Yes. And to make something your friends, you have to own it. And so again, that's something that I really push on my clients, owning their feelings, owning what's going on with them. Because what we tend to do is hide it, right? We tend to stuff it and forget about it. We're not owning anything when we do that. And so when we start to own our mental health, own our diagnosis, own whatever's going on with us, then that helps break down the shame. And so you speak of shame. So in order to break the shame, we have to break the silence and break the stigmas so we can break the shame.
So I know I can go on your YouTube channel, Ask the Therapist, or Esteem Counseling Services.
Yes, YouTube is STEAM Counseling. Everything is a STEAM Counseling service.
STEAM Counseling, and you have more resources. And of course, the way I'm telling people, read about it as well. Read. When you are in a situation, you read and you ask questions that empower you. I like the way you put it, empowering. When you are literate, what does that mean, being literate? That means you have the words, you understand the concepts that help you to move from ignorance to experience. And when you move from not knowing and now you know, that gives you power. And that's what you call being empowered. This is our Zig-Zag conversation. And my guest today was therapist Nathalie Ellis. We had a very good conversation on the quality of life we can have now and the way we can be helpful to our community through mental health. Nathalie, thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you pretty soon.
Okay, thank you very much.